Hello! 2025 is coming to a conclusion, and one of the things that I really like to do at the end of the year is to kind of take some time to look back over my knitting and crochet crafting and see what I've accomplished, see kind of some of the numbers, and it's just kind of a fun little retrospective. So I'm going to take some time today to go through that with you. I will talk about some of the numbers, like grams and yards and ins and outs, some of my favorite projects, and I've actually got some goals in mind for next year. This is one of my favorite podcast episodes to do every year. It's fun to kind of look back. I've been doing this for years, even before I was doing the podcast. But it's just kind of fun to take a look at some of the numbers. I'm a numbers girl, data, that kind of a thing. So let's take a look at what I have accomplished in 2025 in regards to my knitting and crochet. So the first thing I want to do, and I'll try not to overload you with numbers. I have lots of numbers here, but I know if I just sit here and I rattle off a whole bunch of numbers, it's going to be too much for you to take in. So let's just start with the total number of projects that I made. So in 2025, I made a total of 31 projects. And interestingly enough, in 2024, I made a total of 31 projects. I was really surprised when I pulled that out, and it was the exact same number of projects. Interestingly, the total yardage I used was a lot less. Last year it was a total of just over 23,000 yards, and this year it was not quite 20,000 yards. So I was about 3,500 yards less. I'd have to go back and look at the specific projects and see if there was a big one that I was working on in 2024 that I completed that kind of really bumped that total up or not, but overall, I'm very happy with that. My goal was about 20,000 yards total. I was just shy of that, and considering the busy year that I had, I am totally good with that. So how does that break down? 31 projects for this year. I did 4 shawls, wraps, cowls. I did 4 pairs of socks, 6 sweaters. One was a baby sweater, but it still counts. 6 sweaters or tops, 3 blankets, 4 hats or mitts, and then 10 that kind of fell into the other category. I did 3 gnomes, 3 cozies, 2 toys, a float tote, and a set of coasters. So kind of fun to look at how that broke down. And of those 31, 8 of those were crochet. Last year, only 5 were crochet. So I guess I stepped up my crochet game this year. But on the flip side, 4 of those were gifts, whereas last year 8 of them were gifts. So I'd have to go back and see what I was gifting last year and such. But yeah, so those are kind of the overall big numbers of how my projects broke down. I also like to take a look at kind of my yards in versus yards out, grams, that kind of a thing. I don't like set hard and fast rules that I'm not going to buy yarn, but it is just interesting to me, and it just is one way to kind of keep an eye on it. I'm very comfortable with the stash that I have. I have weeded out over the years some of the things that I got like early in my knitting career that I'm just not using. There's probably some more that I could weed out, to be honest, but I'm comfortable with what I'm getting, and a lot of the yarn that I'm getting, quite honestly, comes between my Advent and my subscription yarns. I have my Advent, my Yarnables. I didn't count my Wool and Woman fiber boxes, which I probably should have, because those started in May. I think it was the first box that I got. But just my Advent yarn and my Yarnables yarn came to 9,500 yards, so almost 10,000 yards, which was about a third of the total yards that came into my house. I brought in 28,000 yards of yarn. And I knit, again, 19,778. So it was about a 10,000, 9,000 yard difference. Brought in 9,000 more than I knit out. But you know what? That's quite all right. Again, I'm very content, very happy with my yarn. Another metric that I like to kind of look at and track is what yarn am I using? So am I using my yarn kind of as I get it? Am I using deep stash yarn? So I have a breakdown. I break it down in 3 ways. So I have the yarn used that I got in 2025. I have yarn used that I got in 2024, so it's within a year or so. And then I have anything before 2024. And those numbers are pretty evenly split. Again, very fascinating. The most recent yarn, I used about 7,400 yards. The yarn that's about within 2 years was 7,000 yards, and the yarn that is older than 2 years was about 5,400 yards. So just fun little stats. This is something that I like to do, again, every year. It's super easy because I track all of my projects right in Ravelry. So I just need to pull up Ravelry. You can filter by the date your projects are completed and take a look at that, and it's just super easy to look at that point. So. And then the last thing is, how many whips am I bringing into the new year? This year I'm bringing 7 whips into the new year. Last year I brought in 8. So, and of those, 5 of those were ones that were started before December. So I give myself grace for the brand new projects that I start because it's December. And that's interesting because last year there were 5. I started an extra project in December apparently because I had 5 at the beginning of December and I had 8 at the end of December. This year I have 7 at the end of December. So anyway, I hope all of those numbers didn't like, whew, totally make your head explode. So. Let's take a look though at some of my favorite projects this year. So we'll start with in the sweaters and tops category. This was a really hard category for me to choose because I did 5 different adult size sweaters for myself and they're all very different and I love them all for various reasons. I did my first tank top, well, not really my first tank top, but a tank top that fit really well. I think I did my first short sleeve top that I really, really liked. I did a big bulky sweater, and then I re-knit a favorite sweater into a new version. But ultimately, the sweater that I decided to spotlight for today, I am wearing, I figured I would wear, and it is my Longline cardigan. Let me move the chair out of the way so you can see. I know it's not gonna. So it has this fun detail that goes all the way down and extends into the bottom. It falls like knee length. So I really enjoyed this sweater. Primarily the biggest reason is because it fits me so well. It is so comfortable. Just the fit. I think this is the first sweater I've knit that has just fit me so, so well. I really like the length. It goes with everything. I finished it, I think, in May, end of March, actually, as I'm looking at my notes. But as the winter season was winding down, I think I wore it a couple of times last spring, but I have already worn it easily a dozen times to school. It's just perfect. So Longline cardigan by Joji Locatelli. Interestingly enough, in last year's retrospective video, my favorite sweater was my boxy, which was also a Joji pattern. So maybe I need to make note of that and take a closer look at the rest of Joji's patterns and see if there's anything else that I need to be making this year. Okay, so that is in the sweater category. Let's talk about my sock category. I did, again, 4 pairs of socks. And these are my favorites for this year. They're a little worse for wear because I wore them a couple of days ago. So I literally dug them out of my worn basket. I will wear my socks several different times before I wash them, but so these were waiting in the, not in the clean pile, but in the ready to be washed but can be worn again pile. So there we go. But at any rate, these are my New York City socks. It has become a tradition for me when I go visit my daughter in New York City to knit a pair of socks while I'm on vacation. And when my husband has been with me, we're out and about a fair amount. I have actually gotten the full pair of socks done over the course of that week. This week we did a lot more hanging out at the house, and so I didn't work on them as much there, so it took me until the middle of July to finish them. But I am still considering them my New York socks. And as part of that tradition, I use yarn that I purchased typically the year before on my visit when I go to yarn shops. So I've already got my yarn and waiting for this year's socks. This yarn here was by Trey Liz. It's their Aries sock yarn in Birthday Girl. So they're fun, they're bright, they're comfortable, and they make me smile. So, and then I took the leftover yarn and I make a yarn cozy with it. So I have yarn cozies from all of my New York socks as well. So kind of a fun little yin and yang, as it were. So, all right, how about my shawl? So my favorite shawl, this was an easy pick. I did only three shawls this year, which is really interesting because I'm a shawl knitter and a shawl wearer. Like, I have a ton of shawls. But I only did 3 this year. So this was also an easy pick, and it is my Bahama Advent Wrap. This is by Toni Lipsey. And it is a Tunisian crochet pattern. So this is my first Tunisian crochet project. So it was really fun to do something a little new and a little different. And it used an Advent. So this yarn is from Fair & Girl Fibers. It was the 2024 Advent, which was Beauty and the Beast themed. And so I started this project in May 5th. And I completed it November 29th. So I'm sure you all remember as I was chugging away in the month of November and trying to complete this project. I think it was probably a little bit ambitious of a project to do for my first Tunisian crochet. Not that it was difficult, it's just kind of like for the same reasons that I don't ever suggest people start knitting by knitting a scarf, because it's just really long. So this project felt like it took forever, but I honestly didn't focus on it a ton either. So, but I do love the colors. I love how they play together. I almost grabbed out, kind of as a cheat, the socks that I made with the yarn. But you can go back to, I think it was the last podcast or the first podcast in December. I don't know. It's in the title anyway, and you can see the socks that I made, the companion socks that I made to go with these, because the colors really do flow nicely from one to the other. I reorganized them, so this is not the order in which I opened them. I reorganized them to create a fade out of the yarn. So, all right, so that is that project. My last favorite project, is in my other category, and there was, again, a really wide variety for me to choose from. But in the end, I decided to spotlight my Northeasterly blanket. This was, I'm sure you remember, because this was a year-long project. And it is also a crochet project. So 2 of my favorite projects this year are crochet projects, which is also really interesting, because I'm first and foremost a knitter. But the Northeasterly is by Katy Stevens. I started it in October of 2024, and it was with the Wool & Woman's Fiber Murder She Knit Blanket Club yarn. So every month I got 12 minis, 10-gram minis, that I would then crochet into this blanket. And I have already talked about my thoughts around the blanket club, and I don't think I will do that again, because I felt a lot of pressure to keep up. And so, although it was not hard, and in theory it should not be hard to add 12 10-gram minis to a blanket, it was a lot harder than you might think, and I was constantly playing catch up, or not, so I didn't, because I didn't want to be too far behind. So, although I guess I could say I did not enjoy the process. That's probably a fair statement. I love the finished blanket. The colors are just so much fun and so beautiful, and it's a DK weight blanket, so it is the weight of this. This is heavy. So 12 grams, 12 minis, 10 grams each is 120 grams times 12 months is 1,440 grams. I don't know what that works out to pounds. Isn't like 23 or 26 let's say 25 grams to a pound. I think it's somewhere in that ballpark, right? So for, what did I say? 1,400. So like 12 pounds, 14 pounds. Is that right? Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, 12 or 14 pounds. So, wow, that's really heavy. I gotta do that math again. I'll pop it on the screen. How's that? Regardless, it's a solid 8 to 10 pound blanket. And so it's a lovely weight, and it's warm and it's cozy, and I like it. The one thing I will say that I'm not super happy about, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it at this point, is I crocheted over my ends as I went with the theory that I could just snip them after and they would go away, and now I'm not gonna be able to find it. But I did throw this blanket in the washer because I had to block it. And the ends, oh, maybe if I'm looking on, I don't know what side I'm looking on now. I got ends poking out anyway. And I think if I had just taken the time to weave them in properly, there we go. So see the end poking out? It's not huge, but I got a bunch of those. And I think if I took the time at some point to kind of go through it, and I did when I first took it out of the wash, because there were a whole bunch of them, and it was the first time it was being washed fully. So I'm hoping that they settle in. But that would be the one thing I don't like, and that I would probably change if I were to do it over again. Okay, what is next? So I decided this year, I don't typically do a lot of goal setting when it comes to knitting, but I do know that I have several projects that have just been kind of hanging out there that I have yarn for that I am super excited about. In a couple of cases, I've had the yarn for 1.5 years or almost 2 years, and I want to make those projects. So I decided to create a list. I actually have 6 projects. And they're in no particular order, but I thought that I would just talk about them briefly. I got pictures of each one, and I will link them in the show notes below. So the first one is the Nova Cardigan by Fama. The yarn that I have selected for it is Illimani Sabri in the fawn colorway. It's an 85-15 cotton alpaca. This is yarn that I purchased in New York City last summer when I was visiting with my daughter. I've already swatched for it. I swatched for it in like September. So I really want to get that cast on. I have so many projects already going, but maybe the next couple of weeks I might actually start that one, just because I want to get it started. I want to have a sweater. I want to knit a sweater, and yeah, that's kind of where that's at. So that's thing one. The second one is the Goat Cowl by Laura Dobrotz. I have a Yema's Yarn Smalls kit, theme pack I think it is, or no, it's just a kit. Is it a theme pack? It might be a theme pack. Anyway, it's an 80-20 merino nylon, and I purchased this last June, or May 31st technically, I think, when we had gone up to the Fiber Frolic. We had made a stop, my mom and I, in Waterville at a yarn shop, and she had this kit. I had actually been admiring this cowl for over a year. I'm pretty sure, I don't think it was last spring. I want to say it was the spring before, because I thought about, buying yarn for it at Spa, and I did not this past Spa, but the one before. So it had been over a year since I had first seen this pattern in the Emma's Yarns. I had actually scoped it out. I looked at the Emma's Yarns kits and had thought about getting a kit, and then decided against it. So when I saw that kit in the yarn shop in Waterville, I could not let it go by. So I have that, and I definitely want to make that soon. The next project on my list, again, in no particular order, it was as I was going down through my yarn and Ravelry, and I was coming to the yarn, so it's probably more ABC order as far as the yarn, but I have the Katahdin Cowl by Knitwise Designs. And for this, I have a skein of 1 Lupin Katahdin in Botanical. It's a 100% merino sport. This is yarn that I picked up at Fiber Frolic last spring, And there was a sample in the One Lupin booth, and I bought the yarn, and so I have this one, and I want to make it, so it's because it's designated. So and it's a one skein project. So the next one is the Diamondback Mitts by Stephen West. I have On the Round Plush DK in Lilac, which is a 100% merino DK. I purchased this yarn last February at Spa. The yarn is wound. I purchased it specifically to remake those mitts and never got to it because I had like three little projects that I was doing with yarn that I picked up in Spa, and I wound it all right away, and I did not get to that one. So I want to make those. The next one is the Mesmerizing Mermaid Shawl by Stephen West, and you may remember I bought a kit from Stephen West. It's King Fiber Sassy. It's a set of 4 skeins, 100% merino. I got it in October of 2024. It was an ad that I saw. I think it was on his Instagram. I saw the kit and the yarn, and the colors are beautiful, blues and greens, like my favorite color. So I've had that kit for over a year. So I want to get that one on the needles. And then the last one on my list is Sailing by Meg Gadsbey, and I have a skein of Malabrigo yarn Metamorphosis in Sloth. And this is yarn I purchased in February of 2024 during the Spa weekend at my local yarn shop when we went over there. And again, this was a sample that I saw, and I bought the yarn specifically to knit the sample. And so now it has been almost 2 years that I've had this one kicking around. So of the 6, I have a sweater and I have a shawl. Those are both large, but it's a couple of cowls, the mitts, and then another small shawl, but it's a single skein project. So they're not huge. I did make 31 projects last year, so I don't think it is unreasonable for me to get these projects done this coming year. I don't know what order I'm going to do them in. I don't know if I am going to walk my way down this list before I look at something new. Who am I kidding? That's probably not going to happen. But I have this list here. I want to keep it in mind because this year I want these projects done. Ideally in the next 6 months before summer, before like Fiber Frolic. That would be really, really great. I also know that sometime this spring I am going to need to make another baby blanket and a couple of toys. My nephew and his wife surprised us a couple of days before Christmas. They were unable to join us for Christmas, but they did call to wish us a Merry Christmas and to let us know that they are expecting a little girl sometime. I don't have a date, sometime in the spring. And this is the niece who had a baby around Thanksgiving. This is her brother. So when my nephew's wife saw the blanket and the rattles that I made for my niece, she's like, I want those someday when I have a baby. She kind of like put her order in already. So I know I have to make those. I don't know. I did not know what my niece was having. I do know that my nephew's having a little girl, so it'll be fun because I can tailor it a little bit more instead of making it a little more neutral, which is what I had done. She ended up having a boy, by the way, my niece. Thanksgiving Day, actually, little Wesley was born. So that is my recap. Those are my favorites, my project plans. I would encourage you to take some time and kind of have that retrospective look at what you have done over the last year. It's fun. Something that I really enjoy doing. And I don't know, it's the spreadsheet nerd in me, I guess. So at any rate, those are the things. That's where I'm at. I hope you have a fantastic day, that you take joy in your knitting, and have a great year.